Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to try and give you as much value as I can within that time frame. Stories are something which excite all of us, right? I mean, I love stories, but usually they're relegated to the realm of entertainment. That's where it's always. Thankfully, off late, there are corporates that are picking that up in their parlance. You can share that, but still, it is in the space of branding and marketing. A handful of them are starting to see the power of that, and they're using that in their just daily conversations with managers, with teams. So it's starting to pick up in a good way. But somewhere in the context, sometimes we use stories only, we kind of wake up because there's competition catching up. There's some kind of comparison or competition for which now we feel stories become the differentiator for us. And that reminds me of these two farmers. There was an 80-year-old farmer, a lady, and a 40-year-old snazzy cowboy. And so they're comparing who's is bigger. So he asks her, "Ma'am, how big is your farm?" And so she says, "Well, son, you see this pole here, and you see that pole really far out there? Yeah, that's the length of my farm. What about yours? How big is yours?" And so he says, you know, "I get into my car in the morning and I drive and I drive and I drive. An hour later, I'll reach the end of my farm." And the lady says, "Oh, don't worry, son. I had a car like that once upon a time. Don't worry, it's going to be okay." So, so you know, so beyond, but we beyond the comparison aspect, you realize if you observe stories closely, you will see very often it's in the context of them and us. But the great stories are always bigger than them. It's got nothing to do with competition of them. It's always something bigger. It might involve your story, but the essence is something way greater. And that's why you get drawn into it. So today, I'd like to just talk a bit about that. And like Katie said, I was involved in bringing TED to India. And I was like a kid in a candy store because, you're seeing all these fascinating people, the Oscar winners and Nobel laureates, and then you have this activist who's never gone to school but is changing the world, and you wonder, what are you doing, in the midst of all of that? That's the kind of space. And I was fascinated by how, they're doing this. And that's when I got immersed into the world of storytelling. Because here you are standing with a scientist who's, figuring out how to do something with the DNA through tiger poop. Now, and you wonder, how are you going to make this exciting for the audience? Because the audience is extremely accomplished, very eclectic, and they have very diverse, things that they like. And so how do you make it very engaging for all of them? And it turns out the more I spent time, it turned out that there were some patterns, there were some principles that you could, draw out, and you will find that it can be used in any context. And so, after some time, I think over a year, hundreds of hours of research, I finally created something called Why Be Sexy. That was like the model, right? But it is not it is pronounced like this, but it's written like this, YBSECSE, which is almost like a toolkit of some sort, which has techniques and the way you think about story, how do you approach it. So I brought all of that out, and I started experimenting that in different contexts. So we would go to an organization and say, let's do a story even for your employees. So we just talk to a few employees and elicit their stories and present that out. And using these principles, and you would find the emotions surging in the room. It's like on one side there'll be jubilation, like someone's just scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl finals. You find that, and then on the other side you'll see tears rolling down, not a dry eye in the room. And what we wanted was, people would say, all right, that was a wonderful evening, a memorable evening, but it turns out that's not what is happening. What is happening was, people would say, I feel like a family here. I know a lot of corporates now don't use that word, I know that, but they say, I feel like a family. These are real things that people said. I feel like I will never leave this place. I didn't know I was working with heroes. And mind you, there was no conversation of salaries, no conversation of benefits, no vacation time, nothing, but this is what the outcome was. Why did that happen? Because there is a shared emotion in the room, right? Two people having the same emotion instantly connects them. And then, that has trust, and then there's a multiplier effect. Now imagine if the same thing happened with the brand and your people, your target audience. There's instant trust there, and then you don't need to peddle your product anymore. You don't even need to talk. There's this connect where, you just want to serve each other. You want to, and they will ask you what do you want, you will ask them, and that connect, it's something beautiful. It's a different space. And so if we can treat stories with that sacredness, that sanctity, the outcome is phenomenal. So, if you really break it down, I know I've got very little time, so obviously I can't run through all of this, but I want to leave you with two things. And if you use these two things, I can assure you, you will move way ahead from where you have if you have never used it before, if you have never done stories before. And if you really, strip down the bells and the whistles, all the pomp and glory of story, you will see at the fulcrum, at the absolute core, you will see that it's about one word. There's one word that will help you find the story. Now, I just want to ask you to make a guess. Go ahead and make a guess. What do you think that word is? It's not an esoteric word. It's not the King's English. It's extremely simple. One simple word. Any guesses? Why? All right, it's not bad. Why? Okay. Love. I love that. Love. Okay. Connection. All right. Freedom. Okay. Conflict. All right. I got to give it to you. You got that. You got that. And the word is not conflict, but. It's but. So our job then becomes, you got to find the but. Okay? No pun intended. But you got to find the but and then find your way out. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So what I really mean is, when you use the word but, you're usually having two sentences, right? And there's but in the sentence. I like ice cream, but I'm on a diet. I love this girl, but she doesn't love me, whatever. So when you have the but, you ended up in a problem, right? There is some kind of a problem. So you've got to now find out how to get out of the problem. That's it. And in your space, the way to get out of the problem you already know, because you have intuition, you have your own experience for that area, you will know. But this helps you, this gives you contours of how to go about it. All right, so let's take some actual movies, all right? And then let's figure out how story works there. I don't know how many of you watched this, Slumdog Millionaire. How many? Oh, actually, when I came here a year ago. When I say India, they all say, I know Slumdog Millionaire. I say, I can tell you all of India is not like that. But, but anyway, so this is a movie. Let's figure out what the but is, all right? So I'm going to do the first one, and then we'll take the next one. So this is what? A slum kid lands on Who Wants to Be Millionaire, but he's never gone to school. Okay, so now you've figured out the problem, right? Now you have landed yours. When you write the sentence up, you've landed yourself in some kind of trouble. You've got to find your way out. Now, even if you haven't watched the movie, let's predict what the end of the movie is going to be like. What's the end of the movie going to be like if this is the sentence? He wins. So therefore, if you are the writer, you're going to find out how can he win in spite of not going to school, right? Now as a film writer, that becomes an easier thing. It's better than staring at a blank page and saying, what's the story of my brand? Now you have some contours. You get that? All right, now let's do another one. This is a bit easier problem. Lion King. How many of you watched The Lion King? All right, we've all watched it. Can someone shoot out what's the but of Lion King? What could it be? Just try. Don't worry.
I wanted to be king, but my uncle's an asshole.
All right. So that's one option. What about another one? Something close. He's exiled, yeah, but there's a but. He's exiled, but he's a kid? Okay.
King.
He's a king, you said? All right.
A royal family has a beautiful future, but the envious uncle is terrible.
All right. So it's not bad, right? So let's look at this. I mean, there's no right answer on this one. So I've said the son is to take the throne, but he flees the kingdom. And now why? Because his uncle has deceived him, blah, blah, blah. But the son is to take the throne, but he flees the kingdom. So now, what does the writer have to do? If that's the sentence, what does he have to do? How does he come out? How does he, yeah, like how will he come back to the kingdom and take the throne and obviously defeat the uncle? So the contours become clear, right? Okay, now one more and then I'll move ahead. Let's look at this. Everybody seen this one? Apollo 13, no introduction required. Oops, 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 oops. All right, so what is the butt of Apollo 13? Let's give it a shot. Where's the butt? You've got to construct it in the butt. That's very important, otherwise you won't get the story.
We want to go to the moon, but it's very far and dangerous.
We want to go to the moon, but it's very far and dangerous. All right, somebody else. Yes?
The astronauts want to go to the moon, but their capsule breaks.
Awesome. So that's what I put here. I said, it's a lifetime dream for 3 astronauts to land the moon, but their spacecraft is in trouble, right? So now what's the end? Now, so if that's the but, once you've got that, now you've got to work your way out. So what's the end? Assume you haven't seen it. What would you do? Find a way to get them back without the shuttle breaking off completely, right? Something like that. So I guess you got the context of it. So your job then, when you're sitting in front of your story, is to find out what's the but in this. Okay? Now, an important, just a little pointer there, the but, usually if you saw here in these movies, it's about the character, right? So usually, not always, usually. So when you look at your story then, it's usually about your target audience. So look at your target audience and let's find out what's the but about the target audience. And once I get that, then I will find a way out. All right? So that's one part of this. But that's from movies. How does it work to a brand? So let's look at a couple of classy brands. Nike, everybody loves Nike. You know that they are very polished in their branding. So you're not going to find, because what I told you is this is at the core of it. But when someone builds their story up, you'll see the flesh and you'll see everything else. You don't see the buts. You've got to look for it, okay? So in Nike, what's that? You know that ad which they keep talking about, right? I forget that one. But anyways, let's stick on this one. So where Nike is talking about Michael Jordan, and he's saying, I have tried many times and I've failed, and that's why I succeed. You know that ad? Right. So what's the but there? So they've picked up Michael Jordan, and Nike's sitting around saying, we've got to figure out the but. And so we know that he's extremely successful, but he's failed. Now you've got to work your way out. So how can he be successful yet have failed? That's the contours for him. And then they make this beautiful ad which says, I missed 9,000 shots, 26 times I've been trusted to take the winning shot. I missed, I've failed over and over again. That's why I succeed. And this ad, by the way, has won tons of awards. You know that. Everybody knows that. But here you got to look for the button, you can start finding it. Another one of my personal favorites was Avis Rent-A-Car, because I personally resonated with that because, they were number 2, like, Hertz is number 1. And so they would keep saying that, hey, so what is their but? We know we're number 2, but we want to be number 1. Okay, now they've got to figure out if that's our but, how are we going to work our way out of it? So they did their brainstorming and they came out with something so simple yet really nice. We are number 2, so we try harder. Like you've seen that ad, we try harder because we're second best. There are many versions of this. Beautifully put out, and they've got their contours done. Now, I really like what Hertz did because they ran this for years and they won many awards. They got really popular, and Hertz came a few years later and they did a beautiful comeback. You got to see this. They said, for years, Avis has been telling you Hertz is number 1. We're going to tell you why. I was like, okay, man, you guys really got that one thing. So, all right, so that's their comeback. But anyway, so that's how they do it in brands. Now, you can do the same thing in your brand, but what I want to say is stories are way beyond just brands. You can do it when you're making your report, when you're having a conversation with your manager. So your report could be something like, hey, we wanted to do this. This was a goal. So this is what we were going after. But we ended up with these problems. And then what happened was we tried this and this and this. That didn't work, but this worked. And then we discovered something else. And because of that, we tried this. And then finally, this is where we landed. Now look at where we're going next year. You see that contour? It is way better than saying, this is our goal, these are the challenges, these are the obstacles, blah, 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 blah. It starts to get really boring, sounds like a science paper, and you go off to sleep, right? So, and interestingly, the same thing what I just said is what Pixar says is their formula. They say, what's the formula for a story? Once upon a time, every day, and then one day, this happened. That is the but. You should pay attention. One day, this happened. And then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and finally. That's the story. You can use the same thing for your corporate presentation tomorrow when you're going to speak with your manager, and you'll see the difference there. Okay? Now, that's regarding the but. But, oh, that's not pun intended. Now, if you move away from that, I just want to give you one more area to work on and then see how to move it further. So, let's say you've got the but, you've got the contours defined, but you want to go a little further. You know, you've got to build credibility. It's not just, okay, kidding. It's not just fluff. Story is not about fluff. You want to use your story in a way that you're presented as a thought leader, that you are thinking ahead and bigger than the rest of the people out there. So how do you do that in a very smooth way? Your stories have got to be inspirational. When I say inspirational, what do you mean? You mean you're looking up a bit. So you just use that simple tactic and take your core topic and consider this. Go one level higher on this is a simple formula here. Take your core topic, go 1 or 2 levels above, and explain what that means. Find an interesting did you know in that area and connect it back to your core topic. Let me explain that in the form of a shoe, all right? Let's say you wanted to buy shoes and you go down this lane, there are 10 stores all selling shoes. You go to 9 of them, chances are you're going to hear the same thing, right? Sir, this is these lovely shoes, they're handcrafted, they're leather, they're from Italy, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's talking about what? About the shoe. Now you go into the 10th store and you'll see that he's not just talking about that shoe, he's gone one level higher. What could be one level higher? Well, it could be he knows stuff about shoes in general, okay? So he could say, in a normal conversation, he might pick it up and say, well, did you know that shoes have been around for 4,000 years, but the right and left shoe came about just 100 years ago? It has nothing to do with the shoe, but there's something that is starting to set you up different from the rest of them. The others want to just push a shoe into you. This guy loves shoes, and that's always very effusive, right? I mean, you catch that. But now let's say he goes one level higher. He's now not talking about shoes. He's now going a level higher, which is talking about feet, which means if you know that level, then you need to find out all the interesting things about feet. So find out what's a good did you know about the feet. All right, so now with ChatGPT, no problem at all. So you go find that out, and here he says, sir, as he's putting the shoe, he says, sir, did you know your feet has 214,000 nerve endings? Now, how many of us knew that, by the way? I didn't till I did this research. Okay, so that's interesting. So our feet, did you know, sir, your feet has 214,000 nerve endings, and each of these nerve endings are connected to different parts of your body. So if they are stimulated well, it brings health and vitality to different organs of your body. Now let me show you the shoe, sir, and look at the way it's designed and see how the design stimulates your nerve endings. So this shoe is really good, not just in looks, but good for your heart and your lungs as well. Now, is there a difference? Would you rather buy it from him than someone else? Now, even if you don't, he's not going to worry because there are 10 other people. This is his passion. This is who he is. You see that there's a difference. Now, you're not worried about peddling a product because you're now a thought leader in the space of shoes. It's that easy to be a thought leader. You go 1 or 2 levels higher, find an interesting did you know, and connect it back to your core topic. Very simple. Okay, and with that, what I want to do is I want to share with you one example of where I did branding for a company. It was an ed tech company. And I used basically this. I've played around a little, but basically used these two so you can see how it plays out. Now, ed tech, I did it a while ago, ed tech in India. This was in India. It's a big deal right now. I think the number 1 company there is about $40 or $50 billion, and they ran into some trouble recently, so I don't know. But somewhere there, it's a big deal. And there's this group of institutions in South India, and they were branching out into the digital world. And the students that they produce, they go into the most premium institutions in the country. So like the equivalents of the MITs and the Caltechs. So that's called the IITs in India. In fact, the acceptance rates in the IITs are way lower than it's in an MIT. So, so this institution, the interesting thing is about 20% of the IITs are students from this institution. So they're big deal. So when they're going into the EdTech world, I had to find out what is the but for their target audience. Okay, what do you think it could be? I'll just take maybe 30 seconds and then, what do you think could be the but for their target, which is students, and they're students who want to get into an IIT. They're coaching them to get into IIT. What could be the but?
No formal training.
No formal training. You're very close, yeah?
But it's difficult to get.
It's difficult to get in. All right, so success is the big one, right? What are they all going after? They want to get into this institution. Let's go a level higher. They want success. But now I want to talk about they're not in just success in IIT, but I want to talk about all kinds of success. Success doesn't sound that great. It's too overused. So let's give it a more polished word. Glory, the guts and the glory, the gold and the glory. So everybody wants the glory, but not everybody knows how. That becomes it. Now I have to figure out how to up-level that, find some interesting digi-knows, and connect it back to the core. I'll show you how that plays out in this presentation, and we'll end with that. Okay, so I guess that gave you some kind of a flavor of how we brought that all together. Now, interestingly, and of course, this is the draft that we present. They have to get copyrights and put it into smaller snippets, all of that. But the greater thing is, what they do then is, what we usually do is, very often stories get relegated into the plaque on the wall, and that's what it becomes. But the way to bring that into center is now to say, can you metricize this whole thing? What does glory mean for a K-12 division? What does it mean for the coaching division? Every employee needs to understand what's the emotion of glory, what's the science of glory, what's the art of it. They're going to appreciate that and create metrics for that. Now, it comes right into the center of the organization, becomes the backbone, and then it's no more just one story. It's the way you run the company. All right, so I hope you've got something from here, and I pray that you have the best story for your brand. Thank you.